It's called elasticity. But the question is, how is this elasticity linked to the subcutaneous structures? With the aid of a video endoscope, we began to stroll around under the skin to try to understand this apparently simple word of sliding, mobility, and smooth, slippery surfaces. We wanted to find out how it could accomplish both fast, sometimes violent movements, and gentle, minute ones without the slightest jerkiness. Dissect with a surgical blade, and what do you see? Just a wealth of tissue connections, a histological continuum, without any clear separations between the skin, the dermis, the hypodermis, the vessels, the aponeurosis and the muscles. How is it then that this can all move so smoothly, and how can sliding come about? When you look closer, you can see that just below the dermis and hypodermis, there's a highly mobile tissue encompassing everything else and penetrating what is known as the undermined plane. When this tissue is tracted upward, you get a surprise. Curious movements occur due to the bursting of vacuoles at atmospheric pressure, demonstrating the existence of hydraulic systems under different levels of pressure. The show is total with pseudogeometrically shaped fibrillar structures encompassing the muscles, skin, and fat. Yet what are these shapes? What do they do and why are they there? Is this what we have traditionally termed the connective tissue? Let's now delve into this world of fibrils. Initial scrutiny reveals basically two types of structure. Some are quite wide, with edges like knives and diaphanous surfaces. These surfaces are made of glycoproteinous derivatives. Others resemble longitudinal fibrils, which may be fine, long or short, swollen or cylindrical. At first sight, they look alike. But look closer, and you can see tremendous diversity. Birds' plumage, reed stems, bundles of rushes, ears of wheat whose resistance to traction is considerable, ropes, rigging, harnesses, with rings that reinforce the solidity like an articulated bamboo stem, transparent sails, dewdrops. Travel along these pearly structures, and you notice the same fractal arrangement everywhere. Large fibrils endlessly punctuated by other smaller ones. The tissue continuum is total, the marriage homogeneous, and the arrangement completely fractal. A world of fibrillar chaos. The human body would seem to be one and the same tissue that has differentiated over time, but whose basic organization is stereotyped. Yet this organizational framework supporting life must have its inherent rules of behavior. How are these structures organized? How do they resorb and move, and what role do they play? To use the jargon of physical mechanics, the arrangement can be termed a complex one, completely stable and in search of equilibrium. A system with tremendous capacity to resist and adapt to change. For physicists and doctors alike, there is no other such entity with so much cacophonous movement on the microscopic and macroscopic level. Movements involving the muscles, fluids, fibrils, and cells. Here we are at the very heart of complexity. A Capernaum of collagen bathed in glycolicin with reservoirs of fatty microglobules storing energy, information, and matter. A communications network for exchanging energy, matter, and information between the component parts of the system and the various reservoirs by way of a torrent of blood rushing between the nerves, veins, arteries, and cells. Some mechanisms are still poorly understood, such as the fluctuations in pressure, visible in these images of the movement of drops within a filament that is clearly hollow. There's even more to the story. Within this global network encompassed by the skin, you also have valves able to increase or decrease the flow of information in terms of intensity and speed. Storage times play a leading role here in amplifying or inhibiting other mechanisms, with a direct consequence on fat and lymph reserves. This multi-microvascular system, which at first sight seemed chaotic and complex, is therefore a set of elements with a large number of nonlinear interconnections and arranged with a universal aim in mind: to promote life, to subdivide, to multiply according to preordained criteria such as the level of oxygen, the temperature of the body, and the composition of the plasma. This internal state of equilibrium must be maintained at all cost. Yet this internal equilibrium comprises another essential aspect: the maintenance of the structural equilibrium in terms of mechanical stability and not in terms of flows or transmitters. In order to transmit, the structure must be able to resist, to adapt to basic environmental requirements, and to maintain its architecture. Most sequences demonstrate the existence of pseudogeometric shapes with a polygonal distribution. This visual impression is the most simply expressed in its basic element, the microvascule. We've already seen this with regard to the peritendinous system. It is composed differently according to the dynamic role it is called upon to play. The greater the longitudinal travel, the finer and more repetitive the form of vascular organization. However, the basic composition of a polyhedric fibrillate network filled with jelly remains the same. The bottom line is that the network must ensure its own total movement without disturbing anything else around it. The dynamic has to be absolute and the shock absorption immaculate. These two apparently conflicting roles must also be accompanied by the spring-back memory function, while saving on energy and heat expenditure. The rheologic equation, that is, the local relationship between stress and deformation, could be thought of in terms of rubber-like elastic behavior, as suggested by the collagen fibers, which cannot stretch indefinitely. Another school of thought has it that there could be a mechanism based on fluctuating ion concentrations. The issue is still open, but we believe that the key lies in the notion of combined transmitted stress. Each fibrous element might be connected to its neighbor by a form of pre-stress. When stress is applied, the adjoining element might undergo a slightly lesser stress until it attains the required deformation. However, these sequences of interlacing, intertwining fibrillar structures created by the repetition of movements within other movements